بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعالى، إنك على كل شيء قدير. Okay, it says باب دخول مكة وما يستحب من الغسل قبل الدخول. Entering Mecca and making ghusl before it. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع عن ابن عمر أنه كان إذا دنا من مكة بات بذي طوى بين الثنيتين حتى يصبح، ثم يصلي الصبح، ثم يدخل من الثنية التي بأعلى مكة، ولا يدخل مكة إذا خرج حاجا أو معتمرا حتى يغتسل قبل أن يدخل إذا دنا من مكة بذي طوى، ويأمر من معه فيغتسل قبل أن يدخلوا. So Malik informed us that Nafi' narrated to us from Ibn Umar that when he used to draw near to Mecca, he would spend the night at Dhu Tuwa, in between the two mountain trails, until the dawn, when he would pray Subh, Fajr prayer. Then he would enter by the trail which was in Upper Mecca. He would not enter Mecca when he went on as Hajj or Umrah unless he had performed ghusl before entering. When he would draw, not when he had drawn, when he would draw close to Mecca, okay, at the Tuwa, he would tell those people with him, and they would perform ghusl before entering. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا عبد الرحمن بن القاسم أن أباه القاسم كان يدخل مكة ليلا وهو معتمر فيطوف بالبيت وبالصفا والمروة، ويؤخر الحلاق حتى يصبح، ولكنه لا يعود إلى البيت فيطوف به حتى يحلق، وربما دخل المسجد فأوتر فيه ثم انصرف فلم يقرب البيت. Malik informed us that Abdul Rahman ibn Qasim informed him that his father, Al-Qasim, right, Ibn Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr, used to enter Mecca by night when performing Umrah and do tawaf at the house and go between Safa and Marwa, delaying the shaving his head until the morning. However, he would not return to the house, or we can say the temple, and perform tawaf until he shaved. Often he would enter Mecca and perform witr there, and then go without having approached the house. قال محمد: لا بأس بأن يدخل مكة إن شاء ليلا أو إن شاء نهارا فيطوف ويسعى، ولكنه لا يعجبنا له أن يعود في الطواف حتى يحلق أو يقصر كما فعل القاسم. أما الغسل حين يدخل فهو حسن وليس بواجب. Um, so Muhammad said there's no harm in entering Mecca if one wishes, by day or by night, performing tawaf and sa'i. But I dislike the idea that one goes back and repeats more tawaf until one has shaved or shortened one's hair, as Al-Qasim did. As for ghusl, when one enters, it is good, but it is not necessary. It's not wajib. أخبارنا, so it says سعي going between Safa and Marwa. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا نافع عن عبد الله بن عمر أنه كان إذا طاف بين الصفا والمروة بدأ بالصفا فرقي حتى يبدو له البيت، وكان يكبر 3 تكبيرات ثم يقول: لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير يفعل ذلك 7 مرات فذلك 21 تكبيرة وسبع تهليلات ويدعو فيما بين ذلك ويسأل الله تعالى ثم يهبط فيمشي حتى إذا جاء بطن المسيل سعى حتى يظهر منه ثم يمشي حتى يأتي مروة فيرقى يصنع عليها مثل ما صنع على الصفا يصنع ذلك 7 مرات حتى يفرغ من سعيه وسمعته يدعو على الصفا اللهم إنك قلت دعوني أستجب لكم وإنك لا تخلف الميعاد وإني أسألك كما هديتني للإسلام ألا تنزعه مني حتى توفاني أي حتى تتوفاني وأنا Muslim. So Malik informed us that Nafi' informed us from Abdullah ibn Umar that when he went between Safa and Marwa, he would begin at Safa and would climb up until the house would appear to him. So the issue back then is how high do you have to go, right? And so now there is a line, there's a barrier in between. If you want to go back down, you have to go all the way up to the top basically and come down again. And so they force you to go up a certain distance, right? And so here they're telling us how high he would go up. Um, and then he would say Allahu Akbar 3 times and say there is no God but Allah alone without partner. His is the kingdom and his is the praise. He gives life and he gives death and he has power over all things. And he would do this 7 times, meaning 21 Allahu Akbar and 7 La ilaha illallah. He would supplicate and make dua in between, and he would ask Allah, ask Allah, exalted is He. He would then he would descend and would walk until he came to the bottom of the watercourse. When he would exert himself, he would run until he came back up again. Then he would walk until he came to Marwa, which he would ascend and do it the like of what do the like on it do on it the like of what he had done on Safa, doing that 7 times he had until he had finished his sa'i. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا جعفر بن محمد عن أبيه عن جابر بن عبد الله أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حين هبط من الصفا مشى حتى صبت قدماه في بطن المسيل سعى حتى ظهر منه قال وكان يكبر على الصفا والمروة 3 ويهلل وحده يفعل ذلك 3 مرات. Imam Malik narrates from Ja'far ibn Muhammad. Let's just double check which Ja'far ibn Muhammad this is. He has it in the back. This is Ja'far as-Sadiq. Right. So it says here, this is Muhammad ibn Ja'far ibn Muhammad is Imam Abu Abdullah Ja'far as-Sadiq. So this is the I don't know which Imam, what number of the Imams for the um he's called Al-Baqir. So he's Ja'far ibn Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Hussein. Right. So Ja'far ibn Muhammad, the son of Ali, the son of Hussein, the son of Ali. So the Prophet ﷺ would exert himself until he came back up, and he would say Allahu Akbar 3 times and La ilaha illallah 3 times. قال محمد وبهذا كله نأخذ إذا صعد الرجل الصفا كبر وهلل ودعا ثم هبط هبط ماشيا حتى يبلغ بطن الوادي فيسعى فيه حتى يخرج منه ثم يمشي مشيا على هنيته حتى يأتي المروة فيصعد آه، عليها فيكبر ويهلل ويدعوه ويصنع ذلك بينهما 7 ويسعى في بطن الوادي في كل مرة منها وهو قول أبي حنيفة والعامة. So Muhammad says we adhere to all of this. When a man ascends Safa, he says Allahu Akbar and supplicates. He then he descends walking until he reaches the bottom of the watercourse. This is obviously isn't there anymore. In which he exerts himself by walking faster until he comes out of it. Then he walks with stillness and dignity until he reaches Marwa and climbs up it, where he says Allahu Akbar and supplicates and etc. He does that between the two 7 times, exerting himself by walking faster in the bottom of the water course every time in between them. That is the verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa and our fuqaha in general. باب الطواف بالبيت راكبا وماشيا. So here is a question. You enter the masjid on a horse or a camel. What do you think is normally going to happen if there's a horse or a camel in the masjid?
Sorry, so could you repeat?
So you enter a masjid with a horse or a camel. What would you imagine that will
Uh-huh.
not happen if you enter a masjid with a horse or a camel?
I mean, the people would be angry.
People will be angry. What do you think the camel or the horse is going to do in that masjid?
Um, it could do many things. Maybe it could get frightened. It
Okay,
could,
let's be more
yeah,
specific. Is it likely that something is going to come out of that camel or horse?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
get to the point. Okay, so here then, uh, this is not a dalil qat'i, right? It's not 100% proof at all. But this is what we call, say, kadalil. It's a semi-dalil for those who say that the waste of animals that are edible is pure, right? So how is it possible for you to be riding a horse, right, that obviously has filth on it? How is it possible for you to take an animal into the masjid, right? And it's likely going to do something. So an easier explanation is to say, oh, it's pure, right? The waste of edible animals are pure. There we go. Makes it easy. Right? And this is a position of Malikis, it's a position of the Hanbalis, and it's a position, I believe, of Imam Muhammad himself. I think we saw it way back. Let's have a look quickly. I think he said it way earlier. He said that. Maybe somebody can find in that chapter of in Najasa. I don't know where it says Najasa, but somewhere he said that. And many Shafis have adopted that position. Many Shafis. Wallahu alam. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا محمد بن عبد الرحمن بن نوفل الأسدي or الأسدي. Not sure. There's 2 tribes, Asd and Azd and Asad. So I'm not sure which one it is here. عن عروة عن زينب بنت أبي سلمة عن أم سلمة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها قالت اشتكيت فذكرت ذلك لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال طوفي من وراء الناس وأنت راكبة. قالت فطفت ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي إلى جانب البيت يقرأ بالطور وكتاب مسطور. Um, so Malik informed us. So why is this proof being mentioned? Well, let's read it and then explain. The Prophet ﷺ said, informed us that Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman ibn Nawfal al-Asadi, with a fatha on the scene, Asadi, informed us from Urwa that Zainab, the bint Abi Salama, from Salama, the wife of the Prophet, that she said, I had a complaint, right? I was sick. Shikato, I was sick. So I mentioned that to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, "Do tawaf behind people mounted." She said, "So I did tawaf while the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing salah at the side of the house, reciting by the mount and the inscribed book." So why is this an important proof? This is an important proof because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did a similar thing. But with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you could say, well, there's a reason for that. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did that because he had to show people what he was doing. Here. You could say, well, she's sick. Can you do it later on? Right. So A, it tells us that you'd have to be physically on the ground, right, or standing or anything like that, and and uh, and B, there's a semi-delial that the najasa of these animals is either excused or it's pure. قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ لا بأس للمريض وذي العلة أن يطوف بالبيت محمولا ولا كفارة عليه وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله تعالى والعامة من فقهائنا. Muhammad said, we adhere to this. There is no harm in a sick person and a person with a valid excuse performing the tawaf while being carried, and there's no expiation due for them. This is the verdict of Imam Abu Hanifa. May Allah, the exalted is He, have mercy on him and our fuqaha in general. Um, okay. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا عبد الله ابن أبي بكر عن ابن أبي مليكة أن عمر الخطاب رضي الله عنه مر على امرأة مجذومة تطوف بالبيت فقال يا أمة الله اقعدي في بيتك ولا تؤذي الناس. فلما توفي عمر بن الخطاب أتت فقيل لها هلك الذي كان ينهاك عن الخروج. قالت والله لا أطيعه حيا ولا أعصيه ميتا. Malik informed us that Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr informed us from Ibn Abi Mulaika that Umar ibn Khattab, he was the Imam. He used to lead the prayer, I believe, in Mecca. Ibn Abi Mulaika said that Umar ibn al-Khattabi passed by a leper, a female leper, a leprous woman, doing tawaf on the house. Right, so leprosy is contagious, right? She said, Slave of Allah, stay at home and do not cause harm to people. When Umar ibn Khattab died, she came and someone said to her, the one who forbade you to go out has died. She said, by Allah, I will not obey him while alive and then disobey him when dead. Bab istilam rukn, touching the corner. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا سعيد بن أبي سعيد المقبوري. This is مقبوري with a dot, with a ضمة here. عن عبيد بن جريج أنه قال لعبد الله بن عمر يا أبا عبد الرحمن رأيتك تصنع أربعا ما رأيت أحدا من أصحابك يصنعها. قال فما هن يا ابن جريج؟ قال رأيتك لا تمس من الأركان إلا اليمانيين ورأيتك تلبس النعال السبتية ورأيتك تصبغ بالصفرة ورأيتك إذا كنت بمكة أهل الناس إذا رأوا الهلال ولم تهلل أنت حتى يكون يوم التروية. قال عبد الله أما الأركان فإني لم أرى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم استلم إلا اليمانيين. وأما النعال السبتية فإني رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يلبس النعال التي يلبس فيها آه، شعر ويتوضأ فيها فإني أحب أن ألبسها. وأما الصفرة فإني رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصبغ بها فأنا أحب أن أصبغ بها. وأما الإهلال فإني لم أرى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يهل حتى تنبعث به راحلته. So Malik informed us from Sa'id ibn Abi Sa'id al-Maqburi from Ubayd ibn Jurayj that he said to Abdullah ibn Umar, O Abu Abdurrahman, I have seen that you do four things which I have not seen any of your companions do. He said, what are they, Ibn Jurayj? He said, I've seen you only touching the two Yemeni corners. So there's a corner, what's the Rukn Yemeni al I'm forgetting now. It's the last two. Yeah, the last two. So the corner in which there is the black stone and the one before it. And then there's the Iraqi. Trying to think. I can't remember now which ones are which. So the other two. But this is the one just um I don't remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've been a Rukn al-Yamani. يقابله. Okay. Okay. And I've seen you wearing the hairless leather sandals. And I've seen you dyeing your hair with yellow dye. And I've seen you when you were in Mecca with people began calling out the labbaik when so people do it in the new moon of Dhul Hijjah, and you did not do it until the day of watering on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Abdullah said, as for the corners, I never saw the Prophet ﷺ touch any but the two Yemeni corners. As for the hairless leather sandals, I saw the Prophet ﷺ wearing sandals upon which there was no hair and doing wudu while wearing them, and so I love to wear them. As for the yellow dye, I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ dyeing with it, and I love to dye with it. As for declaring labbaik, I never saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ declaring labbaik until his mount rose to go with him, i.e., to Mina and then Arafah. قال محمد هذا كله حسن لا ينبغي أن يستلم من الأركان إلا الركن اليماني والحجر وهما اللذان استلمهما ابن عمر وهو قول أبي حنيفة والعامة. Um, Muhammad said, all of this is good. One ought not to touch any corners except the Yemeni corner and the stone, which are the two Ibn Umar touched. That is the verdict of Abu Hanifa and our fuqaha in general. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا ابن شهاب عن سالم بن عبد الله أن عبد الله بن محمد بن أبي بكر الصديق رضي الله عنه أخبر عبد الله بن عمر أن عائشة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: ألم تري أن قومك حين بنوا الكعبة اقتصروا عن قواعد إبراهيم عليه السلام؟ قالت: فقلت يا رسول الله، أفلا تردها على قواعد إبراهيم؟ قالت فقال: لولا حدثان قومك بالكفر، أي كونهم حديثي العهد بالكفر. قال فقال عبد الله بن عمر: لئن كانت عائشة سمعت هذا من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما أرى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ترك استلام الركنين اللذين يليان الحجر إلا أن البيت لم يتم على قواعد إبراهيم عليه السلام. Mhm. So Malik informed us, saying from Ibn Shihab Zuhri, from Salim, the son of Abdullah ibn Umar, that Abdullah, the son of Muhammad, the son of Abu Bakr ibn Siddiq, informed Abdullah ibn Umar from Aisha that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do you not see that when your people built the Kaaba, they fell short of the foundations of Ibrahim? She said, so I said, Messenger of Allah, will you not return them to the foundations of Ibrahim? And he said, if it were not for the recentness of your people's kufr, i.e., people will be it's too much for them to change the Kaaba. People might freak out. It's dangerous. Right? So this is sadad the There's something that's right to be done, but not at that time. Abdullah ibn Umar said, if it was Aisha that heard this from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then I can only conclude that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left off touching the corners that come after the stone because the house was not completely built on the foundations of Ibrahim. So he would have touched the other corners, but they weren't there. Does that make sense? So basically the only corners that are actually there are those two corners. And that's why we say in the Shafi'i school that you cannot do tawaf, you can't do tawaf in the Hijr Ismail, that semicircle next to the Kaaba, you can't do tawaf there, right? So, well, why not? I mean, you're outside the Kaaba. We don't actually know where the Kaaba ends, right? So to be careful, you do it all on the outer area. باب الصلاة في الكعبة ودخولها. الصلاة in the Kaaba, entering it. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا نافع عن ابن عمر أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم دخل الكعبة هو وأسامة بن زيد وبلال وعثمان بن طلحة الحجبي والحجبي فأغلقها عليه ومكث فيها. قال عبد الله: فسألت بلال حين خرجوا ماذا صنع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ قال: جعل عمودا عن يساره وعمودين عن يمينه وثلاثة أعمدة وراءه ثم صلى، وكان البيت يومئذ على 6 أعمدة. Malik informed us from Nafi, informed us from Ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم entered the house. He, Osama ibn Zayd, Bilal, and Uthman ibn Talha al-Hajabi, and Uthman closed it after him, and he stayed inside for some time. Abdullah said, I asked Bilal when they came out what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had done. He said he positioned himself with a pillar to his left and a pillar to his right and 3 pillars behind him, and then he performed salah. The house in those days was built on 6 pillars. قال محمد: بهذا نأخذ الصلاة في الكعبة حسنة جميلة وهو قول أبي حنيفة والعامة من فقهائنا. Muhammad said, we adhere to this, so the praying in the Kaaba is beautiful and good, and that is the verdict of Abu Hanifa and of our fuqaha in general. باب الحج عن الميت أو عن الشيخ الكبير. So doing a hajj on behalf of somebody who is now dead or somebody who is now unable to do hajj because they're too elderly. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا ابن شهاب أن سليمان بن يسار أخبره أن عبد الله بن عباس أخبره قال كان الفضل بن عباس رديف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال فأتت امرأة من خثعم تستفتيه قال فجعل الفضل ينظر إليها وتنظر إليه قال فجعل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصرف وجه الفضل بيده إلى الشق الآخر فقالت يا رسول الله إن فريضة الله على عباده في الحج أدركت أبي شيخا كبيرا لا يستطيع أن يثبت على الراحلة أفأحج عنه؟ قال نعم وذلك في حجة الوداع. Malik informed us, that Ibn Shihab informed us that Sulaiman ibn Yasar informed him that Abdullah ibn Abbas informed him that Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, so this is Ibn Abbas's brother, was riding behind the Messenger of Allah sallallahu on the same camel. He said, a woman from the Khath'am tribe came to ask him a fatwa. He said, Al-Fadl began looking at her and she began looking at him. Right? They were interested in each other. And so the Prophet ﷺ, turned Fadl's face away to the other side with his hand, right? And so noticed how they're looking at each other. He didn't shame him, he didn't tell him off, he just took the practical means to stop that happening. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned Al-Fadl's face away to the other side with his hand, and she said, Messenger of Allah, the obligation of Hajj upon his slave, Allah's slaves has reached my father at an old age, and he is incapable sitting on the firmly on his mount. Should I do Hajj on his behalf? He said yes, and that was during the farewell Hajj. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا أيوب السختياني عن ابن سيرين عن رجل أخبره عن عبد الله بن عباس أن رجلا أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال إن أمي إن إم إن أم إن أمرئة إن امرأة كبيرة لا تستطيع لا نستطيع أن نحملها على بعير وإن ربطناها خفنا أن تموت أفأحج عنها قال نعم. Malik informed us from Ayub as-Sakhtiyani, who informed us from Ibn Sirin from a man who informed him from Abdullah ibn Abbas that a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, my mother is an old woman whom we are unable to mount on a camel, and whom if we fastened, we are afraid for that she might die. Should I perform the Hajj on her behalf? He said yes. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا أيوب السختياني عن ابن سيرين أن رجلا كان جعل عليه أن لا يبلغ أحد من ولده الحلب فيحلب فيشرب ويستقيه إلا حج وحج به قال فبلغ رجل من ولده الذي قال وقد كبر الشيخ فجاء ابنه إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأخبره الخبر فقال إن أبي قد كبر وهو لا يستطيع الحج أفأحج عنه قال نعم. Malik informed us that Ayub as-Sakhtiyani informed us from Ibn Sirin that a man had vowed that if any of his sons reached the age of to milk cattle, and did milking, drinking the milk and gave milk and give him to drink, then he would perform Hajj on with his perform Hajj with his son. Right, so out of gratitude, subhanAllah, this is the way of the amazing gratitude, like thanking Allah subhanahu for that blessing that my kids are old enough to do things. He said one of the man's sons attained that what he had stipulated, and he said, and the sheikh had become old. His son came to the Prophet ﷺ and told him the story, and he said, my father has aged and he's unable to perform Hajj. Should I perform Hajj for him? And he said, yes. قال محمد وبهذا نأخذ لا بأس بالحج عن الميت وعن المرأة والرجل إذا بلغا من الكبر ما لا يستطيعان أن يحجا وهو قول أبي حنيفة والعامة من فقهائنا رحمه الله. قال مالك بن أنس لا أرى أن يحج أحد عن أحد. Right. So We'll read that in a second. So we adhere to this. There is no harm in doing the Hajj on behalf of a dead person or person a person who or woman man who have reached advanced as long as they are unable to perform Hajj. This is called the ma'lub, somebody who's unable to do Hajj anymore. That is the verdict of Abu Hanifa and of our fuqaha in general. Malik ibn Anas said, I do not think anyone may perform Hajj on behalf of anyone else. Um, so it's interesting that Imam Malik should narrate all of these things and then say the opposite. Why is that the case? Let's have a quick look, see if we can see commentary here. 1 second. Okay. I want to go back to here. So we mentioned, I forgot to put the recording on, that this whole issue here about performing. So here says وقال مالك مالك بن أنس لا أرى أن يحج أحد عن أحد. When he said down here, Malik said, I do not think that anybody may perform Hajj on behalf of anybody else. He says all of these scenarios are people who are you can't perform the Hajj for somebody who's alive, basically. It's not possible. So these are basically one-off scenarios where people are volunteering to do a Hajj and asking Allah to give that reward to somebody else. That's all. Not that he's literally taking their place, because the fact that they're not capable means they're not obliged to anymore. That's the point, right? The fact that they're not capable means they're not obliged to anymore. Now, for the Shafi'is and others, we're going to say, well, you were once capable. That's the problem. So Hajj was obligatory. You you were once had the financial means and the health to do it, and then you are now no longer financially able and no longer healthy enough to do it. Now you're going to have to pay for somebody or get somebody to do Hajj on your behalf because you were obliged but you didn't do it, as opposed to you were never obliged to begin with. Anyway, the point is we're trying to show that the importance of being very open-minded and seeing things in a different being at different angles. Often when you see a lot of evidence, you just obviously come to a certain conclusion. It would make sense. Like, how could you possibly say that after these three uh, quotes that obviously it would make sense you have to do Hajj for somebody else. It doesn't have to be interpreted in the same way that you're looking at it. So Imam Malik and his ashab, his other Malik, his students and students, they didn't look at it in that way, they looked at it in a different way. Right? And that's perfectly acceptable. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك